Paul in Colossians 2 verse 16 gives a passage that many people use today to say that the Sabbath and the feast days and other commandments we find in the Old Testament are no longer needed, they're no longer obligatory. Is this true? Or let's find out. Hey, this is Pastor Randy. I'd like to welcome you to another drive-by teaching. It's a blessing to be with you today. Well, today I want to talk about Colossians 2 verse 16, a passage that many people use to say that the feast days and the Sabbath are no longer obligatory. Or what does Paul mean there? Well, let's read the passage first and see what Paul says. He says in Colossians 2 verse 16, let no man, it says, therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or of the new moon or the Sabbath days. So we find here referring to the feast days and the Sabbath. So is Paul saying here that these days are no longer needed? Is he saying that people are not to judge us because of now we're free from these Old Testament days? That's how most understand this passage, simply that people are not to judge us on our freedom through Messiah when we refuse or when we ignore the observance of the Sabbath and feast days. Well, this is not the message Paul is giving here. You know, you think about it, that makes no sense at all. Why would Paul say, don't let people judge you on your freedom from not obeying the word? It just makes no sense at all. Let me tell you what Paul is saying here. And you know, if you just read the context and understand Paul is speaking to the assembly, you will understand the message Paul gives here. What Paul is saying is this: don't let those judge you outside the assembly when it comes to the worship of your Father in heaven. You know, here's a fact that really is important to understand. We find Paul and the other apostles, by the way, including the Messiah before them, observing the Sabbath, observing the feast days. So why would Paul say here in Colossians not to judge or allow people to judge us on our refusal to obey these days if Paul himself observed them in the New Testament? Let me just give you one example. I'm not going to turn there, but Acts 20 verse 16 says that Paul wanted to be at Jerusalem for Pentecost. You see, he was keeping the feast days. This was important for Paul. We find the same thing with the Sabbath. So again, why would Paul, again a Jew, or from the tribe of Benjamin, Acts 24 verse 14 says that I believe all things in the law and the prophets. Why would this same man tell the assembly there, Colossae, that they were not to allow anyone to judge them on their freedom for disobeying or not obeying or keeping these days of worship? Again, that makes no sense at all. Paul is speaking to the assembly, and he's telling the assembly not to allow those outside the assembly to judge them on observing the word. Where I pray that this has been a blessing to you. You know, as believers, we need to always check things out. We need to prove what we believe. And here's a reality of what we find in many churches today. Many churches, most, are based on 2,000 years of man-made tradition and not in Scripture. You know, it's amazing the difference we find between churches and what we actually find in the Bible. I would challenge you today to look into this and look into what we teach here at this ministry, because you're going to find that what we teach here is aligned with Scripture, and what we hear from so many is in complete opposition to what we find in the Bible. So I would encourage you today to do that. I would also encourage you to watch all these drive-by teachings, because you're going to learn a whole lot. You're going to learn the truth you're going to hear nowhere else. I pray that this has been a blessing once more. I thank you for joining me, and until next time, may Yahweh bless.
This has been Drive-By Teaching with Pastor Randy. Join the conversation and leave us a like and comment below. Subscribe now for all our latest releases. For one of the most extensive religious websites ever, yrm.org. For all the ways to connect with us, see the description below. From all of us here at Drive-By Teaching, don't get stuck in the slow lane of tradition. Put the brakes on ignorance and put your understanding into overdrive.